To my neighbors, I was Emmett Stone, just Manny, the 65-year-old widower who kept to himself. I lived in a small, older home in the University City area of Charleston, a house my late wife, Annette, had supposedly left me. I drove a 10-year-old Honda Accord that rattled at stoplights. I lived, as far as anyone knew, on Annette's modest pension and a small retirement fund from a teaching job I'd never actually had. I was the man who wore house shoes to get the mail. I bought my clothes at discount stores, the tags always showing a bright orange slash. I haggled at the wholesale market over the price of tomatoes. I was the one who always seemed to need help when the electric bill was just a little too high. This version of me, poor Manny, watched the 6 o'clock news every night. He saved his loose change in an empty coffee can on the kitchen counter. He complained about the price of gas to anyone who would listen, and always talked about these crazy prices if my sons ever took me out to eat, which was rare. Money was tight, I'd say, shaking my head. It was a performance. It was a role I had played for 20 years, a lie so perfectly constructed that on some quiet mornings, I almost forgot it wasn't real. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The real Emmett Stone was someone else entirely. 3 blocks away from my modest home, in a gleaming high-rise I had built myself, the real me lived in a sprawling penthouse kept under a corporate name. This Emmett wore custom Armani suits. He drove an armored BMW parked in a private underground garage. He commanded board meetings in uptown offices, his voice never rising above a calm, assured tone. This Emmett had started with a small piece of inherited land back in the 80s and had, brick by brick, built Stone Holdings, Inc., a real estate empire valued at well over $50 million. When Annette died in 2001, she was my silent partner. She knew everything. With her gone, I faced a choice. I could reveal our true wealth to our 3 sons, or I could shield them from the corruption that I was convinced easy money always brings. I chose to protect them. I thought I was being a good father. What a bitter, bitter joke that turned out to be. During the week, I was the CEO of Stone Holdings. I analyzed architectural blueprints, signed multi-million-dollar contracts, and made decisions that affected hundreds of jobs. On weekends, I drove the rattling Honda back to the small house, changed into my worn-out cardigan, and pretended to struggle with the phone bill. "Oh, son," I'd say, "can you check this for me? I just don't understand these modern things." My sons, Richard, Matthew, and Arthur, loved explaining the basics to me. It made them feel important. It made them feel superior. Richard, the eldest, always had that condescending, professorial air. "Dad, this is how a credit card works," he'd say, speaking slowly. "Dad, just let me handle this. You don't need to worry your head about it." I let them believe it. For 20 years, I let them think they were the smart ones, that I was just a well-meaning but limited old man. The 2-bedroom house was real. I lived there, surrounded by cheap furniture and discount clothes. But the penthouse was where I kept my real life. A walk-in closet of designer clothes, a first-edition library, a climate-controlled wine cellar, and a private office that looked like a command center. It was there I met with Dr. Jonas Hawes, my lawyer and only confidant. For 15 years, Jonas had insisted I tell my sons the truth. "My Manny, this farce is going to cause problems," he'd warn. "They have a right to know who their father really is." "Jonas, you don't get it," I'd always reply. "I want them to build their own paths. If they know I'm rich, they'll become parasites." As if they hadn't become that anyway. All three of them worked at Apex Global, one of my largest subsidiaries. Richard graduated with a business degree, and by coincidence, Apex had the perfect entry-level spot for him. The HR manager, who had no idea who I was, hired him based on his resume. Richard never knew his luck had my name on it. Matthew, the accountant, and Arthur, the lawyer, followed the same convenient path. I watched from afar, through discreet reports, as they climbed the corporate ladder. I was proud. But when they came home talking about their projects, I had to pretend not to understand a word. "How interesting, son," I'd say. "You are all so smart." They swallowed it whole. That night in March started like any other. I'd invited them all over to the small house for a jambalaya dinner. I'd spent all day cooking. It was meant to be a celebration. All three had just received significant promotions at Apex Global. "Congratulations, boys," I said, raising my glass of cheap red wine. "Your mother would be so proud of you all." "Thanks, Dad," Richard said, smiling. He was the new regional manager. Matthew was now a comptroller. Arthur was joining the main legal team. They were all moving up. I listened with genuine pride as they talked about their new responsibilities. I asked questions. I showed interest. It was when they finished eating, their plates scraped clean, that all hell broke loose. Richard stood up, grabbing his glass of wine, a nice Cabernet Sauvignon I'd bought especially for the occasion. He tapped his glass with a fork. "A toast," he announced, a smirk playing on his lips. The table went quiet. "To our father," he continued, looking right at me, "who has finally, after all these years, accepted that he is nothing in life." The silence that followed lasted less than a second. It started with Matthew. He doubled over, cackling, a wheezing sound escaping him. "It's true," he managed to get out. "After years of pretending he understood business." Arthur chimed in, wiping actual tears of laughter from his eyes. "At least now he'll stop giving advice on things he knows nothing about." Their wives, my daughters-in-law, laughed too. Teresa, Richard's wife, covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook. Even my own grandchildren, sitting at the table, giggled because the adults were laughing. My own house, my own table became a courtroom where I was the only one on trial. "Remember when he tried to give opinions on Richard's condo purchase?" Teresa said, as if she were some real estate expert. "Or when he wanted to comment on investments," Matthew added. "Dad, with all due respect, you barely know what a savings account is." I just sat there. My fork was suspended in the air, a piece of meat on it that I suddenly couldn't swallow. My stomach had turned into a cold, heavy stone. Richard continued his humiliating speech, raising his glass higher. "It's better this way, that you accept your limitations. People like you should settle for the minimum and stop dreaming big." That exact phrase. 60 years ago, a teacher had said those exact words to me. "Poor boys like you shouldn't dream big, Emmett." It was the same phrase that had motivated me to build everything I had. And now, 6 decades later, my own son was throwing it back in my face. "We just want you to be realistic, Dad," Arthur said, feigning kindness. "Accept your situation and stop getting involved where you're not needed." It was then I felt something shift inside me. A coldness started at the base of my skull and ran down my spine like melting ice. For the first time in decades, my mask of the submissive, simple father began to crack, because they had no idea. They didn't know who was truly sitting at the head of that table, cutting jambalaya with hands that had signed multi-million-dollar contracts. They didn't know that the poor guy was Emmett Stone, the CEO of Stone Holdings, the very holding company that controlled the Apex Global where they had just been promoted. I swallowed the piece of meat. I took a sip of wine, and I smiled, manufacturing the sweetest, most pathetic voice I could. "You're right, sons," I said. "A man my age should know his place." They applauded. They literally applauded my surrender. And in that moment, the real Emmett Stone woke up. 3 days later, I was still pretending everything was normal. I'd called each of them to thank them for the nice family evening. They were polite but cold. The following Wednesday, Richard called. "Dad, got a few minutes? I wanted to talk about something important." My heart skipped. Maybe he wanted to apologize. Maybe the joke had been in poor taste. "Of course, son. Come on over. I'll make coffee." "Actually," he said, "it's better if you come to my place. Matthew and Arthur will be here too. It's about, well, about your future." My future. How interesting. I arrived at Richard's condo at 3, driving the rattling Accord, wearing my discount store shirt. They were all in the living room, their expressions a poor attempt at loving concern. "Sit here, Dad," Arthur said, patting the sofa. Richard pulled a folder from the coffee table. Inside were color-printed brochures, all for senior living facilities. My blood ran cold. "Dad, it's nothing definitive," Richard began, in that familiar condescending tone. "But we've been thinking you're too lonely in that house." "That's right," Matthew agreed. "You're 65 now. It's not healthy." Arthur leaned forward. "Look at these places, Dad. They have activities. People your age." I picked up one of the brochures. Serene Meadows. On the back, a price chart. $600 a month. The cheapest one. "We already visited a few," Richard said. "This one here is very good. Simple but clean. Within what we can afford." Within what they could afford. The price of a cheap motel room. "And my house?" I asked, looking at the brochures. The three exchanged a look. Richard cleared his throat. "Well, that house is too big for you, and the neighborhood is getting rough. We could sell it." "Use the money to pay for Serene Meadows," Matthew added quickly. "And there'd still be a little left over, for you to have your things. And to split the rest among yourselves," I finished. An uncomfortable silence. "Dad, it's not like that," Arthur said. "It's just, we have our own families, mortgages to pay. Mom's inheritance would help a lot." Mom's inheritance. A house worth maybe $300,000 that I had bought and paid off in the 90s, carefully chosen to appear modest. They didn't know about the 17 other properties scattered across the city. "And when would this move be?" I asked. "We thought maybe by the end of the month," Richard suggested. "I already scheduled a visit to Serene Meadows for Monday. Want to come with us?" The end of the month. I had 2 weeks. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, Dad," Richard lied. "No rush at all. We just want what's best for you." I returned to the small house in absolute silence. I didn't even turn on the radio. My sons weren't just humiliating me. They were actively planning to get rid of me. I walked 3 blocks, let myself into the high-rise, and took the private elevator to the penthouse. I went straight to my secure phone. "Jonas, it's me." "Manny? Is something wrong?" "What's wrong is that you were right for 15 years. This farce is going to cause problems." I told him about the dinner, the toast, the laughter, the brochures. "They want to put me in a $600 a month nursing home, Jonas." Silence on the other end. "I'm on my way." Jonas Hawes arrived an hour later, finding me in the penthouse office with a bottle of expensive French wine open. "Tell me everything," he said. I told him the rest. The plan to sell my house, the 2-week deadline. They're acting like I'm a liability they need to manage as cheaply as possible. Jonas took a long sip of wine. "And now?" "Now," I said, my voice cold. "I'm going to show them exactly who Emmett Stone is. Manny, think carefully. It's one thing to tell the truth. It's another to think about revenge." I smiled. It was the first time in 3 days. "No, Jonas. I'm thinking about justice. There's a difference. Justice is giving people exactly what they deserve." That night, I didn't sleep. It wasn't paternal concern. It was strategic planning. From that Thursday on, I became a professional investigator of my own family. I called Jonas on Friday morning. "I need all the Apex Global reports from the last 6 months. Performance, attendance, corporate expenses, everything you can get without raising suspicion." "Manny, I don't think this is a good idea." "Jonas, you've been my partner for 15 years. I just want to know if my sons are the model employees they think they are." "I'll send the email in 2 hours," he said. While I waited, I started my own investigation. Richard had left an old phone charger at my modest house months ago. On Saturday afternoon, I called him. "Son, can you come over quick? The sink faucet is acting up and I can't reach the plumber." "Ah, Dad," he sighed. "I was just about to watch the game." "Please? It's just a quick look. It must be something simple." He arrived a half hour later looking annoyed. While he tinkered with the perfectly functional faucet, I offered him coffee. "Want to charge your cell phone while you're here? I know you forgot your charger the other day." "Oh, right, thanks, Dad. It's almost dead." "Perfect." While Richard pretended to understand plumbing, I discreetly installed a family tracking app on his phone. The irony was delicious. "Done, Dad," he called out. "Just needed to be tightened." "Oh, you are so clever," I said. "That's what sons are for, right, Dad?" he replied, with that same nauseating superiority. On Sunday, the email from Dr. Hawes arrived. I opened the files in my penthouse office, my dual monitors lighting up. I scanned the reports and found nothing. Richard's timesheets were perfect. 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. Matthew's corporate card expenses were minimal. A few coffees, a team lunch for $30. Arthur's calendar was full of documented client meetings. I leaned back, stunned. Was it possible? Had I misjudged them? Were they, despite their personal cruelty, actually good employees? For a moment, I doubted myself. I felt a wave of shame. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was just a bitter old man. "Jonas," I said into the phone, "these reports are clean, spotless." "Well, Manny," Jonas said gently, "maybe this is a sign. Just tell them the truth. Reconcile. You don't have to do this." I hung up. I sat there staring at the clean reports. But something didn't feel right. The man who gave that toast, he wasn't a model employee. He was an arrogant fool. The man who laughed at his father's humiliation wasn't meticulous. He was sloppy. The lie was too perfect. I pulled out my own laptop and opened the tracking app I'd installed on Richard's phone. His phone's location pinged. It was 2:30 p.m. on a Sunday. He was at his condo. I watched it. Monday morning, 8 a.m. His timesheet would say he clocked in. At 9:47 a.m., his phone left his condo. It didn't go to the Apex Global office downtown. It traveled to an upscale neighborhood, to a specific apartment building, and it stayed there until 1:15 p.m. Then, it went to a gym. It finally arrived at the Apex Global office at 3:05 PT. His timesheet for the day, which I knew would be filed tomorrow, would be a lie. He wasn't just a bad son. He was a fraud. They were all covering for each other. The clean reports weren't a sign of their innocence. They were proof of their conspiracy. I spent the next 3 days tracking him. Every day was the same. Arrive late, leave early. Long lunches at places that weren't restaurants. 2 trips to the same apartment on Liberty Avenue. I called Jonas. They're faking the data. What? Manny, that's a serious accusation. The system logs are clean. The front-end logs are clean, Jonas. The ones they have access to. The ones they can edit. Richard's tracker data proves it. He's billing the company for hours he's spending with a mistress. A mistress? Liberty Avenue, apartment 8B. I ran the building's ownership. It's a corporate lease. I want to know who is in that apartment, and I want to know what's buried on the main server. The real data. The logs they can't touch. Jonas was silent. Manny, what you're asking for, that's not just pulling a report. That's a high-risk forensic audit. It's quiet, but it's deep. If they get a whiff of it, they're taking me to see the nursing home on Monday, I said, my voice like ice. They gave me a 2-week deadline, Jonas. My clock is ticking. So is theirs. Hire the team. I don't care what it costs. I want the truth. Jonas hired the best, a team of digital forensic accountants who worked in the dead of night, slipping into the Stone Holdings mainframe like ghosts. They bypassed the Apex Global servers entirely and went straight for the source code, the unalterable backups. For 3 days, I was on edge. I visited the small house, watered the plants, and collected the mail, playing the part of the confused old man considering his options. On Thursday night, Jonas called me at the penthouse. You were right, he said. His voice was grim. It's worse than you thought. The real files are on their way. The report that came in was not a simple email. It was a 200-page encrypted file, the real data. I opened the file. My hands were steady. Richard, the model regional manager, a 23% rate of unjustified absences. He was late 47% of the time. Early departures, 38% of the time. The GPS tracker data lined up perfectly with his visits to the mistress. Matthew, the meticulous accountant, 12E347. In inappropriate corporate card expenses over 6 months. Pharmacy purchases, gas from stations near his home. $200, team meals at restaurants where the card was used at the bar at 11 p.m. Andrew, the serious lawyer. 72 hours a month billed as external meetings, with no clients or objectives listed. The forensic team had cross-referenced the times with his personal phone records. The meetings were all at the same physical therapy clinic, where his wife was receiving treatment. They weren't just bad employees. They were thieves. The last piece fell into place on Friday. Jonas had hired a private investigator who had, through means I didn't ask about, gained access to their family WhatsApp group chat, the one titled Sterling Brothers. Richard. Guys, on Monday, we're resolving this dad issue once and for all. Matthew. It's about time. I can't stand those calls asking for help with nonsense anymore. Andrew. And he agreed to visit Serene Meadows? Richard. Yes, he found it interesting. Translation. He accepted. He has no choice. Michael. And the house? Richard. Will be sold as soon as he moves in. I already spoke to the broker. Andrew. True. At least now we can breathe, and not have to pretend we care about his little problems. Matthew. Cruel, but real. Andrew. Family is family, but there are limits, especially when the person insists on being dead weight. Dead weight. I saved everything. The audit, the GPS data, the chat logs, the investigator's report. I compiled it all onto a single encrypted hard drive. I locked it in the safe in my penthouse office. My deadline was Monday. Theirs was too. On Sunday, the day before the visit to Serene Meadows, Arthur got nervous. I hadn't returned his last 2 calls, feigning indecision. He decided to check on his poor, confused father. He drove to the modest house. He knocked. No answer. He used his emergency key. The house was cold, empty. He saw the mail piled on the table, unopened for 2 days. He panicked, thinking I'd had a fall. He called my name. Then he saw it. A property tax bill for the downtown high-rise that had been accidentally delivered here. It was addressed not to Emmett Stone, but to Stone Holdings, Inc. His lawyer's brain made the connection. He drove to the high-rise. He tried to get in, but the doorman didn't know Emmett Stone. He said, "I'm Arthur Stone. I'm here to see my father." The doorman, checking his list, said, "We have no Stone, but the penthouse is reserved for a guest of Dr. Jonas Hawes." Jonas Hawes. His lawyer. Arthur's blood ran cold. He waited. He saw me enter the building through the private garage entrance, not as Manny, but as the CEO. He watched me on the security feed. He waited until I left again for an errand and called Jonas's office, impersonating me, claiming he was locked out of the penthouse. A flustered new assistant at the law firm, recognizing the name Emmett Stone, gave him the override code. He got into the penthouse. He saw the suits, the art, the command center. He saw the safe, open. I had been reviewing the drive. In his panic, he didn't grab it. He was a lawyer. He knew about digital evidence. He plugged the drive into my desktop, saw the files, Richard GPS, Matthew expenses, Sterling Bros chat, and understood. He didn't steal it. He wiped it. A complete military-grade data wipe. He destroyed everything. When I returned to the penthouse, I knew immediately. The safe was closed, but not locked. The hard drive was in the cradle, but its light was dark. I plugged it in. Empty. No data. He had been here. Arthur, the smart one. He had found me, and he had destroyed the evidence. For a moment, I felt a flash of pure, cold panic. My entire case was gone. The audit, the chats, the GPS logs, all of it. I looked at the blank screen. He thought he had won. He thought he'd saved them. He thought that without the files, I had nothing. He was wrong. He'd destroyed the evidence. He hadn't destroyed my memory. I knew every date, every dollar amount, every address. I didn't need the drive. The confrontation wouldn't be an audit. It would be an execution. And I would be the one to pull the trigger. On Tuesday morning, I woke at 5:30 a.m. I didn't go to the modest house. I never went back. My first stop was the salon in the upscale part of town, not the $10 neighborhood barber. "Lorraine," I said as I walked in. "It's been a while." Lorraine, my stylist of 10 years, smiled. "Mr. Stone, I was wondering when you'd be back. Resolving family matters?" "Something like that," I said. "Today I need to look impeccable. The most important meeting of my life." 3 hours later, I was unrecognizable. My hair was cut and styled. My beard was trimmed. My nails were manicured. In the mirror, I saw the 65-year-old executive who commanded a $50 million empire. Back at the penthouse, I put on the black Armani suit, the leather shoes, the Cartier watch Annette had given me. At 10:30 a.m., I walked into the Stone Holdings headquarters. "Sharon," I said to my executive assistant. "Mr. Stone, she said, rising. The documents are ready. Good. First, confirm a few details for me. I sat at my presidential desk, the one made of solid mahogany. I reviewed my mental notes one last time. Everything was perfect, irrefutable. At 11 a.m., I called Jonas. Jonas, come up, I need you to witness. He entered the office, his expression worried. Manny, Arthur called my office yesterday, panicked. What happened? He found the penthouse, he wiped the drive. Jonas looked horrified. Then it's over. You have no proof. I don't need proof, Jonas. I have the truth. I looked at Sharon. Summon the three of them, 2 p.m., my office. How should I justify it, sir? Tell them it's an emergency audit. Serious irregularities have been detected, and they need to be clarified immediately. By me. At 1:50 p.m., Sharon buzzed. Mr. Stone, they've arrived. They're in the conference room. They look nervous. Mr. Arthur Stone, especially. Good. Give me 5 minutes, and then send them in. I heard their voices in the hallway, deep and adult, but laced with the anxiety of children caught in a lie. It can't be anything serious, Andrew was saying. It must be routine, Matthew replied, without conviction. This is going to ruin my whole afternoon, Richard complained. Sharon opened my office door. Mr. Stone, shall I send them in? Send them in. I took a deep breath. It was time. The first thing I noticed was the silence. A silence so profound I could hear the central air conditioning. Richard entered first, confident, followed by his brothers. 3 executives ready for a meeting. Richard stopped in the middle of the room as if he'd hit an invisible wall. His eyes scanned the room. The mahogany desk, the bookshelves, the corporate trophies, the blueprints on the wall. Then, slowly, his gaze rose to me. Dad. The word came out in an incredulous whisper. Matthew and Arthur bumped into him, their faces draining of all color. They were staring at a ghost. The ghost of the father they thought they knew, sitting at the presidential desk of the company they worked for. Please, I said, pointing to the 3 leather chairs arranged in front of my desk. Take a seat. None of them moved. Dad? Richard repeated. What? How? Take a seat, I said again. This time, it wasn't a request. They obeyed, moving like automatons, 3 adult men, reduced to confused children. I imagine you are surprised, I began. I adjusted the papers on my desk, blank papers. Allow me to clarify the situation. My name is Emmett Stone. I am the founder and principal shareholder of Stone Holdings Incorporated, the parent company of Apex Global, where you are employed. Silence. Arthur's face was sheet white. He knew what was coming. He thought he'd stopped it. For the past 20 years, I have followed your careers. I arranged your hiring. I watched your progress. And unfortunately, I have watched your irregularities. Irregularities? Arthur found his voice. Yes, Arthur, irregularities. You were summoned because an emergency audit detected serious, repeated, and criminal violations of corporate protocol. I picked up the first blank sheet of paper. Richard Stone, you are the regional manager. Your timesheets claim you work from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. A lie. Richard opened his mouth. No sound came out. On Monday of last week, I continued, you arrived at the office at 3:05 p.m. You spent the morning, from 9:47 a.m. to 1:15 p.m. at Liberty Avenue, apartment 8B. Your mistress's apartment. You billed the company for those hours. You did the same on Wednesday, and the Friday before that. Your unjustified absences total 23% of your work time. I put the paper down and picked up another. Not Matthew Stone. You are the comptroller. You have, in the last 6 months, charged $1,247 in personal expenses to your corporate card. Matthew turned a pale, sickly green. You classified them as representation expenses, like the $240 you spent at the pharmacy near your home, or the $2,800 in gasoline from the station by your house for a car that is not in the company fleet, or the 47 meals at bars long after business hours. I turned to Arthur. He was shaking. Arthur Stone, our legal counsel, you have abandoned your job for an average of 72 hours per month, citing external client meetings. Dad, he tried. Mr. Stone, I corrected him. You have no external clients? Your meetings were all at the Charleston Physical Therapy Clinic? The same clinic where your wife receives treatment? You used company time for months to accompany your wife to her appointments. We didn't know, Andrew stammered. Didn't know what? That it was wrong? Or that I was watching? Dad, Mr. Stone, this is a mistake, Richard tried, regaining his composure. We can explain. Explain what, Richard? How you justify spending company time visiting your mistress? How you explain to the employees who work a full day while you work for 3 hours? This is insane, Richard said, getting angry. You can't prove any of this. You're my father. And you, Arthur said, seeing his opening. You have no proof. I know you don't. I smiled. You're right, Arthur. You were very thorough. You wiped the drive. You destroyed the audit logs, the GPS data, the chat transcripts. You destroyed the files. I stood up. But you forgot one thing. I am the man who built this company. I don't need files. I am the evidence. I walked to the window. You came here to plead family, so let's talk about family. I turned back to them. Let's talk about the WhatsApp chat. The one where you call me dead weight. The one where you're excited to breathe and not have to pretend to care about my little problems. Is that the family you want to invoke? Their faces collapsed. Let's talk about Serene Meadows, the $600 a month room you picked out, the visit you had scheduled for Monday, the plan to sell my house, Mom's inheritance, and split the profits. I walked back to my desk and picked up a real document. Or let's talk about this, Richard. A forged power of attorney, filed yesterday, giving you the right to sell the house on Flowers Street on behalf of an incompetent Elias Stone. How do I know? Because I am Elias Stone, and I own the real estate office you tried to file it with. You, I said, my voice dropping, are not just bad sons. You are not just thieves. You are fools. I sat down and pulled 3 sealed envelopes from my drawer. The gold stamp of Stone Holdings gleamed on them. For 3 decades, I built this company from nothing. In that time, I have dismissed 23 employees for cause, from analysts to directors. All received the same treatment, a rigorous investigation and termination. I slid the envelopes across the desk. Today, you join that list. No, Richard shouted, jumping up. You can't do this. We're your sons. Exactly, I replied calmly. You are my sons, and a father who does not teach consequences for his children's actions is not a good father. But you always supported us, Matthew stammered. I supported you, yes, when you were toddlers learning to walk, when you were teenagers making mistakes. But you are not children. You are men in your 40s, and you behave like parasites. I stood up. You are all terminated, with cause effective immediately. Your badges and access cards have been canceled. Your final checks will be mailed. They will, of course, be docked for the amounts you have stolen. You're treating us like criminals, Michael whispered. You are being treated as former employees dismissed for serious irregularities, which is what you are. Two uniformed security guards entered the office. Gentlemen, the taller one said, we need to accompany you to your desks to collect your personal items. Richard looked at me, his face a mask of hatred. You won. This was not a competition, Richard. It was an education. Through humiliation, he spat. The humiliation, I said, was your idea, at my dinner table. I merely returned it. Arthur, the last one, paused at the door. Are you really going to do this? We're your family. Andrew, I said, for 3 weeks, you demonstrated that you don't want a father. You want a family obligation you can outsource to a cheap nursing home. Well, you're free of that obligation. Now get out of my building. The door closed with a soft click. Jonas and I were alone. Manny, he said, are you sure? I looked out the window. Down below, 3 men in suits were leaving the building, escorted by security. My sons, my ex-sons. Jonas, I replied. For the first time in 20 years, I am absolutely sure. I finally taught them what it means to have a real father. And you know what? For the first time, I think they respect me. 3 months later, my life was quiet. It was a clean silence. My phone no longer rang with sons checking if I was okay. Translation, checking if I was still alive for the inheritance. The modest house on Flowers Street was sold in April, not for $300,000. I sold it myself for $1.1 million. The entire sum went directly to my new foundation, the Venerable Elders Foundation. Ironic. The house they wanted to sell to institutionalize me would now build dignified places for elders who were truly in need. I heard what happened to them. The corporate world is small. Richard lost his BMW. He got a job at a small construction company, earning 1/3 of what he made at Apex. Matthew, without a corporate structure, was a failing freelance accountant. Arthur had to close his private practice and was a low-level associate at a small firm. They were learning what real life was like, without my invisible protection. And I felt relief. 6 months after the firing, on a September afternoon, Sharon buzzed me. Mr. Stone, you have a visitor. Your grandson. Gregory. My heart stopped. Gregory, Richard's 17-year-old son. The boy who had laughed at the dinner. Send him in. Gregory entered the office as if stepping onto enemy territory. He was thinner, more mature. Hello, Grandpa. He looked around the opulent office. So, it's all true. You're rich. You always were. Yes. He sat in the chair his father had collapsed in. Why did you never tell us? I thought it would protect you from the corruption of easy money. Did it? He asked. I looked at him, 17 years old, with that sterling intelligence in his eyes. What do you think? He laughed, a bitter, dry sound. I think it didn't work. My dad is a mess. My mom is thinking about separating, and I'm confused. Gregory, I said, my voice flat. You laughed when he humiliated me at the table. He flinched, as if I'd slapped him. You remember? When he made the toast to me being nothing in life? You laughed. You thought it was funny. I was a kid, he stammered. You were 16. You were a young man learning from your family that disrespecting elders is acceptable. He began to cry. Not manipulative tears, genuine hot tears of shame. I regret it, he whispered. I know. Can I fix this? This was the test. Gregory, do you want to know the difference between you and your father? He nodded. Your father regretted it when he discovered I had money and power. You are regretting it because you understood you hurt someone who loved you. He looked up. It's different. Completely different. I stood and walked to the window. Your father has spent 6 months sending letters, begging for forgiveness. But he always mentions his financial difficulties. He's asking for a handout. You came here knowing I owe you nothing. I turned to face him. Why did you come? Because, he said, I wanted you to know that I understood. I understood that you're not the bad guy. The adults in my family, they failed. I sat down. If you were me at that table, Gregory, hearing that laughter, what would you have done? He thought for a long time. I'd be devastated. And after discovering the rest, the nursing home, the chats, I think I'd be angry. Angry enough to do exactly what you did. Then maybe you understand, I said. This wasn't cruelty, it was delayed education. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a business card. You're in your final year, correct? What do you want to study? Medicine. But, well, now that's going to be difficult. I wrote something on the back of the card. Take this to Dr. Martin Costa at the Venerable Elders Foundation. It's one of the institutions I fund. What is this? It's a scholarship program for young people who show the potential to be better than their families. But there are conditions. He stood up, alert. What conditions? First, you will work in our clinics during university. Weekends. It's not easy work. Caring for abandoned elders? Okay. Second, this is between you and me. No one in your family, not your father, not your mother, can know. Understood. Third, I said, leveling my gaze at him. If I ever see you repeating your father's patterns, the arrogance, the disrespect, the sense of entitlement, the scholarship is revoked instantly. I won't, he said. I promise. Don't promise me, Gregory. Prove it. He clutched the card. Thank you, Grandpa. Don't call me Grandpa yet, I said. You've earned the right to call me Elias. The title of Grandpa. You'll have to earn that. He nodded, understanding. Thank you, Elias. A year after the dinner, Gregory was thriving. He was working at the clinic and excelling in his pre-med studies. He told me about the elders he cared for, the ones whose children had dumped them and never visited. He was seeing firsthand what his father had planned for me. His father, Richard, was not doing well. His divorce was final. He'd lost his job. He was, I'd heard, drinking heavily. He sent me a letter via Gregory. I opened it. It was exactly what I expected. Apologies mixed with justifications. Repentance mixed with blame. Dad, it read, these months have been hell. I lost my job, Tanya left me, I'm about to lose the house. I know we were wrong. The dinner, the home, everything. We disrespected you. But Dad, what you did to us was so extreme. Firing us, cutting us out. It feels like you wanted to destroy us. I'm not asking for my job or money. I just want my father back. Please give me one more chance. He still didn't get it. His repentance was entirely self-centered. He was sorry he got caught. He was sorry he was poor. I wrote my reply. Robert, you say you want your father back, but you never knew who your father was. You only saw what you chose to see. You never saw Elias Stone. You say my response was extreme, but I did not destroy our family. I simply stopped pretending it existed. I wish you the best in rebuilding your life, but I will not be part of that journey. The father you remember is gone. 2 years after the dinner, I received an unexpected visitor. Andrew. Shonda announced him nervously. I almost said no, but curiosity won. He looked different, thinner, grayer, The suit was worn. The arrogant lawyer was gone. "Elias," he said, using my first name, a sign of respect. "Andrew. You have 5 minutes." He nodded. "I came to apologize. Not to ask for anything. Not to rebuild anything. Just to apologize." "I'm listening." 2 years ago," he said, his voice steady, "I participated in humiliating and planning to abandon a man who spent his life sacrificing for his children. That man deserved respect and love. We gave him cruelty. He sat down, uninvited, but it didn't feel presumptuous. I've spent 2 years learning what it's like to actually work. I've seen my marriage strain. And I've realized every struggle I've faced is a direct result of taking for granted the advantages I never earned. Advantages provided by a father I never bothered to know. "Why now?" I asked. "Because Gregory told me something. He said he learned from you that love without respect isn't really love. It's just a habit." Andrew's voice broke. "I realized that's all we ever gave you. Habit. We went through the motions of being your sons, without ever loving the man you were. I just needed you to know. Your lesson worked. It's too late to fix what we broke. But it worked." He stood to leave. "For what it's worth, I'm proud to have been your son, even if I was never worthy of it." After he left, I sat in my office for hours. Andrew's visit had introduced something I wasn't prepared for. Not doubt, but confusion. Was redemption possible? Yes, there's a lesson in all of this. It's not about revenge. It's about respect. For decades, I allowed people to treat me as less than I was, because I thought that's what love required. I thought being a good father meant accepting disrespect. I was wrong. Love without respect is just a habit. When I finally demanded respect, when I showed them who I was, everything changed. Some relationships ended, but one with Gregory became real, and another with Andrew was rebuilt from the ashes, based not on obligation, but on earned dignity. Today, I am 68. I am richer than ever, respected in my industry. I have a grandson who genuinely loves me, and a son who authentically respects me. It is not the family I started with, but it is infinitely better than the family I was pretending to have. Robert and Matthew are still out there, waiting for me to go back to being the man who accepted their disrespect. That man is dead, and I do not regret seeing him go. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.